Tonight on GamePoints episode 394, Keanu Reeves is going to be Shadow the Hedgehog, the Ready or Not developers suffer a massive data breach, and my beloved Dead Space seems to be on ice once again. All that and more in just a moment, but first I want everyone here to know this is an audience interactive podcast, so if you're watching us live here at Twitch TV /GamePoints, or later at any myriad video hosting platforms, feel free to join the conversation if any questions, comments, concerns you might have. Just try to keep them germane to the topics on hand. Alright, go ahead and jump right into the very first story that I have here today from Insider Gaming. The link to this story and all the ones we'll be talking about is provided down in the description below or over on our Discord server if you want to go take a look at them. I recommend you read them for yourselves as well, just to make sure everything's on the up and up. Headline: Ready or Not developer has 4 terabytes of data stolen, including the full source code. It is hard to overstate how bad it is to have the source code for your game out in the wild. For a myriad of reasons I'm not necessarily going to get into right now because we've talked about it before in the past, but that is so damaging to your game that it can feasibly end the game. Because it just means that hackers have it wide open. Now they know exactly what you did to prevent cheating and manipulating the world, and it is so bad. I will say up front right now, however, from the consumer/player side, it appears that no personal information on the players has been leaked. For now. Let's go ahead and get into the article once again from Insider Gaming here. Void Interactive, the developers behind Ready or Not, has been a victim of a massive data breach worth over 4 terabytes of data stolen. This includes over 2.1 million files in total. The ransom group, which Insider Gaming has decided against mentioning their name of, announced in March that it had access to the data. Since then, however, Void Interactive has not mentioned any sort of breach or concern regarding Ready or Not. That also leads credence to the fact that no personal data would have been leaked, because if that was, they would have announced immediately that it happened to prevent any potential lawsuits from hitting them later. So I tend to believe them when they said no personal/player information has been released, just from a purely cover your own ass legal sense. To the article. As far as the legitimacy of the hack, Insider Gaming has been shown the contents of the files taken under the condition they aren't republished. This data includes all of Ready or Not source code. This also includes code for what appears to be console builds of the game, as well as various performance tests. Insider Gaming was shown images of the game running on a PlayStation 4 test kit with builds taken from the breach. There's also build data for Xbox One, Series S and X, PlayStation 5 included. Luckily, it doesn't appear to be impacted in any way from what was gathered as personal information of players or staff members at Void. Everything appears to be strictly centered around the game itself. Insider Gaming has reached out to Void Interactive to comment and will update the story should a response be received. It certainly seems like the hacker group themselves contacted Insider Gaming to get the story out there, maybe to apply pressure to Void Interactive. This very much seems to be a ransomware attack. It is a ransom group that Insider Gaming says has the data. I have to wonder if Void Interactive was just ignoring this problem or sending law enforcement after it to deal with it internally, rather than potentially spooking players and consumers that, hey, your shit's out there and might get stolen. Once again, that doesn't seem to be the case. If it was Ready or Not, I believe Void Interactive rather would have been very upfront with saying, hey, this is out there, I'd imagine, but since it all seems to be internal company information, they're probably ignoring the ransomware attack. Who knows how long it might be before it pops up over the internet. The article does say in March, and these ransomware groups give 30 days to post the ransom. It could still not be up yet, because they could have jacked it in late March before they ended up sending out the ransom letter, as it were. So we could have a couple more weeks before we start seeing anything popping up, assuming, of course, that, once again, law enforcement doesn't step in and smack these people down. No idea either way. I guess we'll know by the end of this month if they were bluffing or not. Insider Gaming seems to be certain that they are, however, in possession of the goods because, well, they've seen it. Whoever is at the ransomware group showed Insider Gaming the details, and it was enough for them to write this article. I get the feeling it is kind of meant to pressure Void Interactive a little bit into capitulating to whatever the ransom group's demands are. But once again, time will tell. This poses an interesting question. What morality does Insider Gaming have to report these people to the authorities? They are a press outlet that does afford them some moral ambiguity in sourcing, not so much in hiding their sources to craft a narrative, but to protect who's telling them this from other things, including the authorities to a degree. But this isn't like a whistleblower at a company trying to say, hey, the government's doing shady shit here. This is a ransom group. These aren't good people. Now I know some people say, oh, it's they're not murdering or doing drugs or anything like that. Okay, that aside, they're still doing damage to a company, and it's more than just like, here's a bad PR statement. They actually have stolen shit here. So what morality, what responsibility does Insider Gaming have to divulge who's doing this to the authorities? They could have also forwarded already to them. We don't know. And it would be wise of them to not mention that in an article lest they fall under the ire of other ransom attacks. And there is a duty to protect your sources, even if some of those sources are a touch vile. But they're not really a journalist site either. At the end of the day, it is just a video game website. This isn't like Fox or CNN or something like that. Not that I trust either one of those two establishments either. It's an interesting ethical question to ask. Let me know what your guys' take on the ethics of this one are. More than the story itself. The story itself, probably. I mean, we don't know. We don't know if it's going to get released or not. We don't know if they actually have as much as they say they have. They could just be propping Insider Gaming up to be a mouthpiece. Who knows? I want to focus more on the ethicality of this. Is ethicality a word? It is now. So tell me what your thoughts are on this. Move on to the next story here, as announced earlier today, or yesterday rather, from The Hollywood Reporter. Keanu Reeves is joining Sonic 3 as Shadow. I'll be the first to admit Sonic is a goddamn meme, but those movies, they make bank. They're doing very, very well. So this isn't really surprising either. Keanu Reeves seems to be kind of on this feel-good tour. That he's doing things that it feels like he's doing less things that he necessarily will make him a lot of money or Oscars, stuff like that, and things that will make people smile. Cyberpunk, this, etc. Bill and Ted 3. And go him. Sorry, I'm about to cough. 1 second. And go him. Live your best life, Keanu Reeves. A man who I can't think of a single person that has anything bad to say, by the way, about. He seems just a very affable gentleman. But yes, he is going to be voicing Shadow in Sonic 3, according to the Hollywood Reporter here. Keanu Reeves is speeding along to another franchise, the John Wick star heading to Sonic the Hedgehog 3. He'll be voicing the popular character named Shadow, multiple sources tell the Hollywood Reporter. The news comes on the heels of a jam-packed CinemaCon presentation from Paramount last week when the studio debuted the footage from Sonic 3. This included a revelation that Dr. Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey, was depressed and out of shape after the events of Sonic 2. That would be the fat Eggman. He's called Eggman for a reason. But gets his groove back thanks to creating Shadow the Hedgehog, a character first introduced in the video games of 2001's Sonic Adventure 2. This character in many ways is the anti-Sonic, dark and edgy while mirroring the hero's powers. Not to be confused with Knuckles the Echidna, voiced by Idris Elba, who's also dark and edgy. Either way, I expect that Sonic movie to do very, very well. Those Sonic movies are shockingly highly produced and very beloved, and I don't get it. I've never been a Sonic guy. I liked the original trilogy on Sega, and Sonic CD on Sega CD was awesome, but after that, I couldn't even begin to tell you anything about the games anymore. Also, the fandom's a little bit weird. You know what I mean? However, that Twitter account, or X account, I don't know if it still is. That X account was nothing to be fucked with for a while there. And I have nothing absolutely at all bad to say about their social media team. God, please don't come after me. Also announced this week from Warhorse Studios, we have a teaser of whatever they're going to be revealing on tomorrow, essentially, my time. Thursday, 8 CST, 8 p.m. CST. Come see what Warhorse Studios is working on. Now, this is the team that made Kingdom Come Deliverance, a very excellent role-playing game that tries to be very true to life and follow historical events. They're not saying what it is, but it's Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Or Kingdom Come subtitle here. But it is going to be part of that series. I don't know if it's going to feature the same characters or not. It might. But they are definitely going to be leaning, they are going to be leaning into the historical RPG, which was very cool. It was nice to see a point of history I don't know much about, and a part of the world I don't know much about it during that time. I wonder if they're going to leave that area or not. I'd imagine not, considering that Warhorse, I believe, is in Poland or on or near that area. Anyways, let's find out. Prague, not Poland, Prague. Central to Eastern Europe, very close to each other. That is where they're based out of. I'd imagine their next game would be in the similar area. Whether or not it's going to be taking place during the same time or featuring the same people, that remains to be seen. But this is dollars to know it's going to be Kingdom Come. Also, shout out to Warhorse Studios for not bowing under pressure. When Kingdom Come Deliverance, the first game came out... that's not what I wanted. When Kingdom Come Deliverance, the first game came out so many years ago, they were getting lambasted for not having any people of color in it, despite the fact that Poland at that time really didn't have any. And a couple of other just culture war bullshit where they were trying to be dragged. Someone in the press were actively trying to get the studio canceled, and they essentially told them, fuck off. And that game ended up doing very, very well for Warhorse Studios. Not well for, say, EA numbers. We'll touch on that here in a second. But well for a small indie studio whose debut game was just huge. 2018 is when Kingdom Come Deliverance came out. I could have sworn that was... No, that would have been out 6 years ago. I have to wonder, though, when they announce this new game coming up on Thursday, is it going to be a couple months away, a year away, or are they just announcing that it's starting up and we still have to wait another 2 or 3 years for it to come out? I hope that's not the case. I hope that they are smart enough to have a release date less than a year after after its announcement. We don't want those long, drawn-out hype trains, because you blow your chance to keep the momentum going. Definitely don't want that. All right, moving to EA, which I mentioned earlier. We go to Bloomberg for this one. Archive down below, because Bloomberg's paywalls suck. This one hurts. Dead Space franchise is officially on hold at Electronic Arts. Now, I'll mention the story of some caveats out the gate. There are many reporters taking multiple different takes on this. I'm going to read what this one is, and I'm going to mention what a couple other places have said. To the article itself. Electronic Arts put the Dead Space series on ice for the second time, despite the release of a critically acclaimed remake last year that appeared to give new life to the troubled video game franchise. Although the news that sci-fi horror series was shelved came out this week, EA's made the decision as early as last spring, according to people familiar with the project. Hopes for a new Dead Space game at EA were derailed after sales of the remake missed the company's expectations, said the people who asked not to be identified because they aren't authorized to speak about it publicly. After finishing Dead Space Remake, which was released in January 2023, a small team of Electronic Arts subsidiary Moto spent a few months conveying ideas for a new entry in the series, said the people. But those plans were never given a green light and fizzled before they could get very far. Since last summer, that team has instead been exploring other ideas while the bulk of the developers who worked on Dead Space moved to other projects. Those other projects, by the way, seem to be a new Battlefield game that EA is ramping up for. That's right. Kill Dead Space again. Give us another goddamn Battlefield. That I hate EA so much sometimes. They take away all the things I like. So, one of those weird differing reports, well, it comes down to whether or not the Dead Space 2 remake was greenlit or not. A few people out there saying, yeah, Dead Space 2 was in the cards and got the axe at the beginning of this year because there was no interest in it. Other people said it was never in development at all, that Motive had already moved on to somewhere else. EA is denying that Dead Space 2 was ever given the okay, despite that that people like Jeff Grubb and Jason Schreier saying their sources claim otherwise. Who's telling the truth here? I don't know. At the end, it doesn't really matter. The point of the matter is that Dead Space is a dead game again. It is a dead franchise once again. Unfortunate. I would have loved to have seen a remake of Dead Space 2, although it doesn't need it nearly as much as Dead Space 1 did. Dead Space 2, I still think graphically holds up to this day, and it is excellent when it comes to survival horror / action. The first Dead Space did need some quality of life issues. It helps to have Isaac actually voice acted again, and they dropped some things in there that fill in plot holes that were throughout the first game, as well as tie it into certain revelations that happened in 2 and 3, making the remake Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3 a far more cohesive trilogy than it was before. So would I love Dead Space 2 remake? Yes. Am I happy that we just got that one? Also, yes. I never expected to see a Dead Space remake, Dead Space 2 remake anyways. So while still bitter that the franchise seems to be dead once again, I'm happy that we got what we did, because they very well could have just not done anything with it. That said, if you're just going to sit on it for a fucking decade and a half, please just give it to someone else. I don't want to be 70 to play Dead Space Remake 2. Please, EA. Don't fuck me on this. Moving on to the next story here, and a little rage baity, but that seems to be where IGN is going now. Star Wars Outlaws Jabba the Hutt mission locked behind Season Pass. This is both unexpected and to be expected, and I'll explain after the story here. Ubisoft has already come under fire for a single-player game, Star Wars Outlaws, having a season pass, but fans are expressing frustration once again upon noticing its highly anticipated Jabba the Hutt mission is locked behind it. One, how is it highly anticipated? As far as I know, we haven't seen all that much on it, so that feels like they're taking phrases from a press release and just putting them in wholesale into the article, but I digress. As reported by Spanish outlet Area Yugones, forgive me, Ubisoft's website outlining the contents of the Season Pass, an optional extra to the $70 standard game, so far is only available through its $109 Gold Edition and even more expensive $129 Ultimate Edition. It reveals it includes access to Jabba's Gambit mission at launch. It's unclear how much of Jabba the Hutt content will be locked behind the Season Pass, but Ubisoft has said in part that past players can work for and even betray Jabba as head of one of the Outlaws' criminal factions. It's now unclear whether this content comes out of premium or as part of the standard game. It's probably going to come as a premium. Let's be 100% clear here. I fully expect any interaction with Jabba to be sliced off for an extra $20, wherever the Season Pass is going. The mission description very much sounds like an introduction to working for Jabba, however, at the very least, confirming that $70 won't give players access to all of Star Wars Outlaws. IGN has asked Ubisoft for clarification and comment. So the reason why this is both surprising and not surprising, it's not surprising the fact that it's Ubisoft and we would expect them to do something like this, right? Or any major AAA publisher. Lopping off chunks of your game, hiding it behind paywall content, demanding you buy a season pass. However, what is kind of surprising about all this is that particular tactic of get the extra DLC story missions that seem to be vital to the actual game experience itself seems really to be a thing of the past. The days of doing that, the pre-order 3-mission expansion to the game, if you pre-order to get the code, or things like Javik being hidden behind a paywall in Mass Effect 3, really does seem to be out of a decade ago. But what else should we expect from Ubisoft, whose the most recent large hit was a goddamn Avatar game, a franchise itself seemingly out of a decade ago, long past its prime. Buying a game at launch is objectively buying the worst version of it when it's at the most expensive it will ever be. if you can hold off 6 months to a year, probably even by Christmas, to be quite honest with you, on buying Star Wars Outlaws, they will have their Game of the Year edition for possibly less than 70 at the time, with all of this shit thrown in it. And it will be patched, and it will be improved upon, because we live in a ship it now, patch it later society. There's no reason to buy this out the gate, and there's already so much shit out there right now. Speak with your wallet, and that's even assuming that you want Star Wars Outlaws to begin with. I know that there are a lot of Star Wars fans out there still. The game looks fine. It is riddled with that Marvel dialogue. You know what I'm talking about. It used to be known as the Joss Whedon syndrome. I don't have too much hopes for this game, but I want it to be good. I did think the more recent Star Wars games in the form of the Jedi series, Fallen Order, and Survivor, I thought those are pretty goddamn good. But this, every time I hear more about it, it just sucks the gem right out of my donut. I am not enthused about playing this game at all anymore. As an aside, this does seem a little bit weird for IGN to be writing about. Because there have been other games that have done this, not nearly as many as there was 10 years ago, but there have been other games that have done this, and you don't hear anything about it. IGN seems to have a very specific bone to pick with Ubisoft. Or it could just be their slow descent into an SEO farm, or SEO farm, where they just type in what's popular and make articles based off of that. Either way, it really does feel like IGN has Ubisoft in its crosshairs, and has for quite a while now. They seem to be exceptionally harsh on that studio when compared to other studios that do equally shitty things. Good on them for calling out a bad business practice. I just wish they would do it more if, say, Sony or Microsoft, or especially Nintendo, who just gets a pass on everything they do in this goddamn industry, it seems. But yeah, more gated content, which means one of two things, by the way. One, the content is so unimportant that they didn't feel it was necessary to put into the final game itself, so it can be ignored completely. Or two, is so vital to the story that they willingly cut it out, knowing that they can milk you for another $20 out of it. Either way, the response to such thing is overwhelmingly not to buy it. Do not reward this behavior if you can help yourself. My stance has always been, if it's cut content behind a paywall, well, then it must not have been all that important to begin with. Now, was it? Even though some of it clearly is. Once again, I used the Mass Effect 3 with the, I think his name was Javik, the DLC character that was locked away. He actually dropped some important story bits. I hate this business practice so much. Please, do what you can to punish him. We're going to stick with IGN for this next story here. Skybound's latest crowdfunding campaign aims to raise money to develop a new Invincible game. 30-person studio formed to develop a AAA title. Skybound is kind of picking up the pieces of Telltale. You know, the old Walking Dead, Game of Thrones guys. So I would not expect to see anything different when it comes to the Invincible game. They've already kind of made something like that before, an Adam Eve kind of visual novel, choose your own adventure. I would expect something along those lines of like The Walking Dead or Wolf Among Us, but in the Invincible series with this game, but we'll see. Anyways, enough preamble, let's get to the article. Skybound Entertainment has announced a crowdfunding campaign to develop a new game set in the Invincible universe. As an aside, by the way, Skybound's a big company. They can afford to do this without kickstarting it or crowdfunding it. I really do also hate when a big studio goes, we're going to crowdfund this game to see if it's to fund it so we can make it. That is a lie. What they're doing is, one, they're kind of doing an end round around pre-orders, because this way they don't even have to guarantee a final product. And two, they're gauging interest for outside investment. If they can show that they hit their goal in like 6 hours, They can go to an angel investor and go, see, people want it, you'll make a return, and then they'll drop 2, 3, 5, $10 million on the game, and with actual promises of a cut of the sales in the end. This crowdfunding at this level is designed to make the company money, not to actually get you to make a game. Keep that in mind. Skybound said the funds will be used to develop a AAA title based on the comic book series created by Robert Kirkman. The campaign, which launched today, has already surpassed its funding goal of $50,000, with over $150,000 currently raised at time of this writing. That's what I'm talking about. $50,000 isn't enough to make a game. You hit $50,001. That's not enough to pay for even like a month of dev time. They have what, 30 people on staff? That's not even enough to pay the salary. That's not even enough to pay the salaries of all 30 of those people. The crowdfunding idea is not actually funding the game. It's meant to lure in investors. At this level, anyways. It's really, really shady when a company does that shit. We are thrilled to launch this regional crowdfunding campaign on Republic, inviting fans to join us on our new expansion adventure, CEO of Skybound Entertainment David Alpert said. At Skybound, we prioritize fostering meaningful connections with our audience, and this initiative allows fans to not only immerse themselves in the world of Invincible, but also directly contribute to its expansion. The new Invincible game is to be developed by an internal 30-person studio consisting mainly of vets previously employed at studios including Amazon, EA, and Epic Games. I'd be very curious to know if there are people who were recently let go or not. Hey, more power to you. I like Invincible. I like both the comic and the cartoon. I just really, really get queasy when I see big studios, and Skybound's big. They're not Naughty Dog, but they're big enough that they can afford their own fucking funding to a game doing stuff like this, because it really feels manipulative and dirty. But if you don't care about that stuff, congrats, you got another Invincible game sometime soon. Clearing out through the news real quick, let's go ahead and move on to some upcoming events. Nintendo of America is going to be having a Nintendo Indie World tomorrow, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. 20 minutes of announcements and updates from indie games heading for Nintendo Switch. Of course, let the Silk Song fan base start screaming once again, because they are ravenous for Hollow Knight 2 news. I have no idea if we'll ever get an announcement of that game. I'd imagine at this point, they just have to say it's out today. Because I don't get it either. I like games like that, but Hollow Knight bounced off of me hard too, so it never really clicked with me all that much. Not to promise that Hollow Knight would be at the indie world. I'd imagine it'll be other titles before Hollow Knight, just smaller indie stuff. We are approaching the end of the Switch life cycle, so you're going to start seeing things that are multi-platform at these things more than anything exclusive for the Switch. Not to say it won't have its exclusives, to be clear, but I do expect these Nintendo Directs, or in this case Indie World Showcase, to become a little less meaningful as we get closer and closer to the inevitable announcement. But either way, tomorrow we'll have more information what's going on. Now, it's been a little bit since we've had some layoffs, but boy, do we have a bunch of them right now. Once again, from Bloomberg here, Grand Theft Auto maker to fire 5% of its staff and drop some projects. Take-Two Interactive Software Inc., the company behind Grand Theft Auto video games, plans to fire 5% of its workforce and drop several projects as part of a cost-saving drive. The company sees expenses up to $200 million as part of the effort, including as much as $140 million for canceled projects and $35 million in employee-related costs, according to filing on Tuesday, earlier today. Take-Two had more than 11,000 employees at the end of that late last fiscal year. According to the filings, the shares were unchanged in extended trading. 11,000 employees, 5% of that, you're talking about 500 people, give or take. And remember, I don't believe that any of these layoffs are going to be the only round of layoffs. This is the first round, in my opinion. You'll probably see another 5% before the end of maybe not in Take-Two's case, because they got Grand Theft Auto 6 coming and they need a massive support team for that. But I do expect more than just 5% will be laid off. That's just what they're announcing right now. Take-Two's not the only studio going through some issue, or the publisher going through some issues. Immortals of Avium Studios essentially furloughed. Now, Video Game Chronicle for this one. Now, if you remember a few months back, we talked about how they laid off roughly 40% of their staff. The rest of them aren't even laid off. This is actually a fate worse than death when it comes down to it, and I'll explain here in a second. Immortals of Avium developer Ascendant Studios reportedly furloughed the majority of its staff. That's according to a LinkedIn post by former employee Chris Moniz, which has been corroborated by Polygon reporter Nicole Carpenter. Ascendant Studios furloughed majority of their staff, said Moniz, who had left the studio last summer to join Phoenix Labs. Can imagine what it would be like, because this is worse than getting laid off. Here we go. They actually do get into it. Furlough is an imposed leave of absence from work, which is typically unpaid. While employees technically keep their jobs and are expected to return to work at some point, it means they don't qualify for things like severance pay. That's right. That means essentially they say, we're not firing you, but we're not going to pay you either. Now, I do believe that means they can keep things like their health insurance and benefits, but for the most part, they're firing you. And they're not going to pay out unemployment or severance. It's exceptionally fucky. The state of California does this quite often with its own employees, where they just go every Friday, we shut down because we can't afford it because our budget's so mismanaged. You'd expect that from a government, but not a fucking private company. This is what I'm talking about, where EA just has something fucked up going on. It's not just fair to single out EA. I do expect more of these. I guess the question is, to me it sounds like worse than getting furloughed, because you're not getting severance. You can quit, but they don't have to pay out anything like that. But at least you get to keep your medical benefits. So if you're a 2-family house, maybe that helps. This is just fucked. It really is. At least have the balls to fire. Fuck off with this furloughing shit. Back to the article. Carpenter went on to say that this lines up with what I've heard at Immortals of Avium developer Ascendant Studios, that a large portion of the staff are recently furloughed. I haven't been able to confirm the numbers, but Ascendant hasn't responded to multiple requests for comment, she added. The studio's debut game, EA published Immortals of Avium, was released on PlayStation 5, Series S, and X, and PC last August. The following month, Ascendant laid off nearly half of its staff, with its CEO Brett Robbins saying the move was down to poor sales. The move was due to poor sales, I'd imagine is what they mean. A crowded release window. No, it was not because of a crowded release window. It was because Immortals of Avium was sent off to die. It was a fine game. It's okay. If you like a first-person shooter, I recommend taking a look at it. It has some cringe dialogue in it, but it's not bad. It's a decent, albeit quick, playthrough. Pick it up on sale. It's not going to help these people at all, but it wasn't bad. I would have liked to have seen them actually go somewhere with it. Also, one final round of layoffs that we have to talk about as we go to Insider Gaming for this last bit. EA shutting down Apex Legends UK QA team with around 50 people affected. EA was shutting down its Apex Legends UK QA team with around 50 contractor works affected. According to sources who spoke with Insider Gaming under the condition of anonymity, I can never say that word right. Workers were called into a business update Zoom call yesterday. It was announced that their contracts would not be renewed. Bizarrely, managers and project leads were less of a dark about the news, only to find out those affected about the call that QA contracts will not be renewed. That's fucked. You don't even tell people what they're going in for. You just spring it on them. I hate that shit so much. UK team established in 2022, responsible for QA and Apex Legends from Season 16. During the call, it was said the decision to not renew contracts wasn't due to the team's performance, but due to a restructuring of the business. AKA, we need every penny we can because we're fucking drowning in debt. Or 2024 is going to suck. Or sales are just horrible. The economy's in the toilet. It is going to be a bad, bad year. Sources say that the team performed well and hit all of its targets and goals. It's understood that this was not among the 670 employees who were laid off from late February. So this is not part of that announced layoffs a few months ago. This is in addition to. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to get worse before it gets better. I know I have said that for months and months and months now, but there is no end in sight to this nonsense. It is going to continue hammering the industry until there is no fat left. It's going to be super lean and expect significantly fewer releases next year because of it. Because any project that is not guaranteed to be a multi-million-dollar seller is getting the axe. Or something that they can release for a shoestring of a budget. I hope you all enjoyed 2023, one of the most banging years in video games that I've seen with its massive releases. Because 2025 is going to, and later this year as well, in my opinion, is going to be a barren wasteland. The good news is 2023 was so stacked we can play the backlog all the way up till 2027 likely. Our best, of course, goes out to everyone affected by these layoffs. It is what it is. Just make sure you have your resumes updated, a nest egg saved, and start putting your nose to the ground looking for contacts to make in other businesses, so that way if you do get fired, you can slip into another position easily, even if that means leaving the game unit. And on that, once again, downer note, this has been GamePoints episode 394. I do stream this live every week here at Twitch TV/GamePoints at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so come on by and be part of the show. If you can't join us live, however, you can also go down to Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, etc. and find us there. We have a Discord server you can join, link provided down below. You can follow me on X at CapitalistPig21. And of course, if you like what you saw, you know what streamers want. Likes, big shares, follows, subs, rumbles, whatever your format has to approve of the video itself. Please make that known. You can catch me streaming throughout the week here as well at Twitch TV/GamePoints. Come on by tomorrow. I'm playing Planet Crafters. Really enjoying that one. We have a new Stellaris expansion on deck. Probably be getting to that again soon here too. Till next time, y'all take care. And I'll be seeing you.